Boyd Coddington's garage was never just a place to park cars. Long after the lights went out and the doors stayed shut, people kept asking the same question. What was hidden inside the workshop of one of the greatest custom car builders in history? When the doors finally opened, it wasn't the dust that caught everyone's attention. It was something far more valuable. Every tool, every unfinished project, and every mark on the workshop floor told the story of a man whose influence refused to fade. But what made this garage so important, even after Boyd was gone? The answer reaches far beyond classic cars. When Boyd Coddington passed away in 2008, the custom car world lost one of its biggest names. Fans mourned the man they had watched on television. Builders lost someone who had changed the way custom cars were created. Collectors wondered what would become of the machines still sitting inside his famous shop. But before we get to that, you have to understand why this garage mattered in the first place. Boyd wasn't simply a talented mechanic. He completely changed the world of hot rods. His greatest achievement came at the Grand National Roadster Show, where he won the America's Most Beautiful Roadster Award an incredible 7 times. That record still stands today. Winning the award once is enough to make a career. Winning it 7 times places someone in a league of their own. Judges looked at every detail, from craftsmanship to originality and flawless execution. Again and again, Boyd's work came out on top. But how did one workshop keep producing cars that no one else could match? The answer was hidden inside his California garage. This wasn't a flashy corporate design center filled with expensive machines. It was a working shop where ideas became reality through skill, patience, and an almost obsessive attention to detail. Every welding table had a purpose. Every custom jig existed because it solved a problem. Every sketch and measurement represented hours of careful planning. Nothing inside those walls happened by accident. And that level of precision left a mark that could still be seen years later. But trophies only tell part of the story. Millions of people were introduced to Boyd through the television series American Hot Rod. Viewers didn't just see finished cars rolling out of the shop. They watched the pressure, the deadlines, the disagreements, and the relentless pursuit of perfection. The cameras captured a workshop where every mistake mattered because every customer expected something extraordinary. That exposure turned Boyd's garage into one of the most recognized custom car shops in America. Yet television only showed part of what was really happening behind those doors. So what made customers willing to pay extraordinary prices? By the mid-1990s, Boyd wasn't building ordinary customs anymore. A single project could cost as much as $500,000. That wasn't because of a famous name alone. Every vehicle was built almost entirely by hand. Panels were shaped individually. Suspension parts were machined specifically for each build. Paintwork required weeks of preparation before the first coat was even sprayed. These weren't modified production cars. They were rolling works of art created for one customer at a time. But if one car could be worth that much, imagine what the workshop itself contained. The shop started in Stanton, California, where Boyd developed his unmistakable style. As demand exploded, the business moved into a much larger facility in La Habra. The bigger building allowed larger teams, more specialized equipment, and increasingly ambitious projects. Every expansion reflected growing confidence from collectors willing to pay premium prices. Inside the garage sat expensive tools, custom-built equipment, stacks of aluminum, half-finished bodies, and specialized fixtures designed for jobs no ordinary repair shop could perform. Nothing was ordinary. Almost everything represented future value. But then everything changed overnight. When Boyd died on February 27, 2008, the question was no longer what he would build next. Instead, everyone wanted to know what would happen to the business that depended so heavily on one man. Unlike a traditional manufacturer, every project in the shop carried Boyd's personal touch. Customers weren't buying a product. They were buying his vision. Suddenly, unfinished builds filled the workshop with uncertainty. Would they ever be completed? Would clients still trust the business? Or had the story ended forever? The situation was far more complicated than many realized. Cars sat at different stages of construction. Some had beautifully finished bodies waiting for paint. Others were little more than modified frames. Parts filled shelves. Work orders remained unfinished. Employees knew the projects intimately, but the person whose name defined every build was gone. The garage became frozen in time, holding not only expensive machinery but also unanswered questions. Yet one surprising idea soon began changing how people looked at those unfinished cars. Collectors started viewing them differently. Instead of seeing abandoned projects, many saw historical artifacts. In the collector world, provenance, the documented history of an object, can dramatically increase its value. If Boyd had personally worked on a vehicle, that connection mattered. Suddenly, incomplete cars became something unique. They were physical evidence of his craftsmanship, preserved exactly as he left them. But would buyers actually pay serious money for unfinished work? The answer shocked many people. At major collector auctions, several unfinished Boyd Coddington customs crossed the auction block. 3 incomplete 1944 projects sold for £57,200, £49,500, and an astonishing £81,400. None of them were finished. Buyers weren't purchasing complete show cars. They were buying projects that still needed countless hours of labor. So why spend that kind of money? The reason became obvious when people looked closely. The metal shaping had already begun. The frames had been modified by Boyd's team. The unique proportions that made his cars instantly recognizable were already taking shape. Buyers weren't paying for scrap metal. They were paying for Boyd's fingerprints on the project. Each unfinished build represented a rare opportunity to own something connected directly to one of custom car history's biggest names. But those numbers become even more impressive when compared with fully completed examples. One finished Boyd pickup later sold for £374,000. Suddenly, the value difference made perfect sense. Buyers recognized the gap between potential and completion, but even unfinished work carried enormous worth because of its origin. It was much like owning an unfinished painting from a legendary artist. The work may not be complete, but its creator still gives it extraordinary significance. Yet another sale would push Boyd's legacy even further. One of his most famous creations, the 1948 Cadillac known as El Dorado, became proof that his reputation continued growing after his death. This wasn't an ordinary restoration. Nearly every body panel had been reshaped by hand. The roof was lowered. The rear transformed. The finished car looked more like something imagined decades into the future than a post-war Cadillac. Built over many years, with Boyd involved before his passing and later completed by his son, the car represented both generations of craftsmanship. When El Dorado finally reached auction, it sold for an incredible £802,500. That wasn't simply a high sale price. It was a statement. Collectors weren't buying transportation. They were investing in automotive art. The market had spoken clearly. Boyd Coddington's work had moved beyond the world of hot rods and into the same category as other highly collectible masterpieces. But that remarkable sale also highlighted something many people overlook. Every famous Boyd build began inside the same garage. Every panel was shaped there. Every bracket was fabricated there. Every weld, every measurement, every adjustment happened within those walls. The garage wasn't famous because television cameras visited it. It became famous because extraordinary machines were born there. The building itself became part of the story, a place where imagination and engineering came together day after day. Even years after Boyd's passing, the workshop continues to represent something larger than one man. It stands as proof that craftsmanship leaves a lasting legacy. The trophies remain. The surviving cars continue appreciating in value. The unfinished projects remind collectors of dreams left incomplete. Even the tools tell a story, because they created machines that continue commanding $6 and seven-figure prices around the world. In the end, the biggest secret inside Boyd Coddington's garage was never hidden treasure or forgotten riches. It was something far more meaningful. The garage preserved the physical evidence of one builder's extraordinary career. Every scratch on a workbench, every custom fixture, every unfinished body shell showed exactly how greatness is built, not through shortcuts, but through relentless attention to detail and an unwavering commitment to excellence. That's why people are still fascinated by Boyd's workshop today. It isn't just an old building filled with classic cars. It's the place where one of the greatest custom car builders in history changed an entire industry, set records that still stand, and created machines that continue growing in value long after he was gone. His garage became more than a workshop. It became a monument to craftsmanship, creativity, and ambition. And perhaps that's the greatest legacy of all. The dust may have settled, but the impact of what was created inside those walls continues to drive the custom car world forward, proving that true craftsmanship never really disappears. It simply becomes history waiting for the next generation to discover.